I had to stop typing out the last entries. To be honest, I wasn't transcribing beyond what I had read myself, and what I was reading started to frighten me. I've been seeing my dad in my dreams lately in odd situations. There are two dreams I have to describe to you before I get back into his journal, both from last night. The first, I was in a church and my dad was at the pulpit. I wasn't raised religiously at all and can't remember the last time I had went to church. He stood at the pulpit wearing a hospital gown with a purple sash in front, his gray hair flowing down his back, blowing in a non-existent breeze. I saw him speaking and heard a muddled voice, but I couldn't make out what he was saying. Then it struck me. He looked just as he looked in the final days before his death. The hospital gown was just like what I imagined him wearing before he died. Suddenly he stopped speaking and looked directly at me, and I saw fire in his eyes. When he opened his mouth to speak again, I knew he was going to speak directly to me, and suddenly I woke up. The second dream, I was sitting at a diner. I don't remember the start of the dream, but at the point I can begin recalling the dream, I had ordered bacon and eggs, and had a mug of coffee in front of me. I looked into the coffee, black as I always ordered. Steam rose from it, but as I looked into it, I could clearly see my reflection back. But it wasn't me, it was my dad. The same as he looked in the first dream. I couldn't see my eyes in the reflection, or should I say, his eyes. I pushed the coffee away and mumbled to myself, "Chosen, chosen." I woke up in a cold sweat. It was 3 a.m. and I immediately ran to my computer to continue transcribing his journal. October 10th, 1969. He turns 5 today. He told me that Carol's cake tastes like shit. I scolded him for his language. I should repent. I don't know if I can be forgiven, though. We sat in the living room all morning. I looked at my hands, and the grease stains are finally fading from the days at my garage. I serve a far greater purpose now than oil changes and tire rotations. 8 p.m. He looked at me after the cake was gone. Carol had gone to bed. She entrusts me with his care. She berates me for not helping with money anymore. But she doesn't understand yet. He turned to me and said in his clear, innocent voice, "Trust in God. Trust also in me. He knows I trust him. He knows. That slut Nancy is useless. She doesn't understand. Jimmy, you need to find the knives." He smiled so wide, like his head would open on a zipper. "Find the knives, Jimmy. I know they aren't in the car. Where are the knives?" December 1st, 1969. I don't celebrate my birthday anymore. It isn't necessary. December 10th, 1969. Mother was in my dreams again. She speaks so beautifully. I love her soothing voice. It soothes me and reminds me of my purpose. I love it when she comes into my room as I sleep and looks over me, protecting me. The worms crawl from the sockets of her eyes. They protect me as well. I love her tattered dress and her mangled blonde hair. She leans over to kiss my forehead, and I smell the sweet rot on her breath. She wants to protect Joshua too, but she knows that now is not the time. I am here to protect him. Then she watches me at the foot of my bed. Her mouth opens and she breathes out the flies. And quietly, ever so sweetly, she speaks to me. "Carol must be gone. Take care of Joshua. He is chosen." December 20th, 1969. Carol is no more. Joshua agreed it was time. We are going to find Mother. I have to stop for a moment. This is really strange. My dad never acted psychotic, but these sound like the ramblings of a madman. I always knew him to be a level-headed, hard-working man, not a lunatic. I know he did a lot of drugs when he was a teenager, but reading this does not sound like a drug-induced psychosis. I took a quick break and poured myself a large scotch. It had been 10 years since I have drinking. I swore it off, but I'm just a little too shaky right now. Something else I noticed is that somewhere in the middle of these entries, his normal beautiful penmanship turns to chicken scratch. It's barely legible. Really, this isn't the handwriting I remember in the letters he would write me later in life. Great Aunt Carol, I know my dad mentioned her briefly from time to time. He didn't like to talk about his youth. You could say he was a bit old school, closed off. This was the most I've heard of her. I have no idea what he means when he writes that she is gone. I have to press on a bit longer. I can't sleep quite yet. My hands were shaking and making typing difficult, but the booze is calming me down a bit. January 15th, 1970. Mother is safe and sound. She took us back in. It wasn't difficult to pry back the wood bearing the door at our house. I haven't been back since we left, since Carol. That old cunt. She never could understand. This is Mother's house. She was sitting on the couch when we came in. There were flies everywhere. She smiled widely and took Joshua into her arms. Her sweet voice poured out the sweet sulphurous smell of rotten eggs. Good work, James. You have returned him to me. Joshua looked back at me and smiled with all his teeth. Now we can be together. Now we can be together. I know this is true. I'm ready to have our life back. I take him from Mother, and I put him back in his crib where he belongs for now. The booze is starting to get to me. I need to lay down.